Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for being here. I hope that it'll be a really informative evening. You've got a piece of paper on the table in front of you, and so we want to start with the question that I'm going to put up on the slide overhead. And it's just very simple. How does this conversation we are about to have make you feel, and why? Just take a minute to write down an answer. Positive, wave your hand. Negative, wave your hand. In the middle? Okay. So Brandon spoke about this book that I wrote called Another Country, Everyday Social Restitution, and one of the first things that I do is I just sketch out the inequality in our country because we forget. And so on this slide, there's a whole lot of numbers, and I want to just talk about two of them. The one is the number in the top corner where it says 20 years. And it's the difference in life expectancy between white South Africans and black African South Africans. Colored South Africans and Indian South Africans are somewhere in between. So the difference in life expectancy, 20 years. Inequality in our country is a matter of life and death. The second piece, the second figure on that screen is the figure that you see that says 116th. There's an index put out by the United Nations Development Report, that talks about where we are in terms of countries in the world. So out of, say, 200 countries, South Africa is 116th. And it's a measurement of life expectancy, education, gender equality, and a few other indicators, income. The figure that you see next to it, 15th, is what? It's the place where white South Africans are on that list. And 15th is the same as the place where the UK and Sweden are, and it's one position better than where Belgium and France is on that list. And so the reason I bring your attention to that is because we forget. We forget about the levels of inequality in our country because those aren't really the figures that we see in the newspapers. And the other thing that we frequently see is we see poverty in our country on television and all over the show, but we don't really engage with it as middle-class South Africans, as white South Africans, too much. And so we forget. And so when we come to conversations, we frequently say, yes, but it was 24 years ago, or yes, but I've worked for what I have. And the truth is that that's not true. That the inequality in our country is something that we've built on over centuries of colonization, of apartheid, of racial inequality. So the next slide says this. In my book, I talk about the different positions that we have. And you're probably very used to talking about perpetrator and victim of injustice. And so what I've done in the book is I've said, well, those two binaries, while they're true, we need other descriptions. And one of the key descriptions that I speak about is this notion of being a beneficiary. What do we have not because we worked for it, but because we were given more opportunity than anybody else? So this last weekend on my Twitter feed, somebody posted a really good comment that said, we really should stop talking about the fact that when our parents came here from somewhere else, or our grandparents, or our great-grandparents, look what they were able to do, even though they came from a very poor background. They came from Lithuania, or they came from Ireland, or they came from wherever. And somebody responded by saying, well, isn't that the perfect example of how it's possible for a destitute, poor white person to come to this country and do so much better than the people that they found here? So that is a really good example of the inequality in our country. So when we talk about restitution, it's a legal term. It's a legal term that really understands the fact that we really can't be just going on with business as usual, and that we really need to start thinking about how we make things right. So legal restitution is quite stark. It's about restoring before the injustice occurred. It's about compensation or reparations. It's about gain stripping, removing the gain that you have because of injustice. It's sometimes about acting symbolically It's about returning rights that were lost or stolen or removed. And sometimes it's about rehabilitating the offender. So it's quite a stark definition. That's the meaning of the word restitution. What I've tried to do in this book that I wrote is to say the courts are dealing with the injustices in our country, but they're certainly not dealing with them fast enough. And so one of the things that we could be doing as everyday people is thinking about social action, and I know this is part of your social justice committee. What are the things that we can do as individuals, as a church, as a community? And for me, the picture is this next one that says, I think of social restitution as a voluntary moral obligation, and something that I think Christian people should take very seriously because of the understanding we have of justice. It's across generations. Even though we read in the Bible that the sins of the fathers aren't vested on the children, but the benefits of the past injustices are certainly vested on the children. And so we've got to deal with across generations. It's forward-looking, it's not punitive. It's so that we can all have a better life in this country, so that all of us get to 94, rather than some of us at 50 and some of us at 116, or wherever we think we're going to end up. It says making things good again, not making things right because we can't. Too much water on the bridge, people have been killed, lives, livelihoods, homes have been lost. But how can we build something new that represents a vision for the future? So, the last thing is, when I talk like this, I got so excited because people really wanted to read this book and wanted to do these things. And then what I did, because I'm an academic, I did a national survey of what people thought about restitution. And here's what I found. So, white South Africans must act to repair the past. 60% of black South Africans thought they should. 20% of white South Africans thought they should. Let me go down to a restitution fund. 54% of black South Africans thought they should. 14% of white South Africans. A tax, 8% of white South Africans. But here's the part that really broke my heart. Small group discussions about restitution. 22% of white South Africans thought those were a good idea. 1 in 5. So you probably are the 1 in 5. Most of us, most white South Africans think we should forget the past and move on. Well, thank God, and I mean it, that there are a lot of people in our country who are not going to let that happen. Starting with the students on campus, starting with people in our communities. We mustn't, because it's not a just principle. So I know that Brian's going to talk about the theological basis for land, but I just had 3 things that I wanted to say, and that is that a starting principle that we read in the Bible is that no one should benefit from the injustices of the past. The whole Bible is filled with that. It culminates in the story of Zacchaeus. That there needs to be consultation with those who have been unjustly treated and hurt by the past. And there's some really good stories in the Old Testament that teach us that. Story of God, David, and the Gibeonites, and I won't go into it. And then there's also this issue of wisdom. We really need to understand how best to act when the way is not clear. And I think that is part of this evening's process. We really need to think about dignity and wisdom and justice all the way through the conversation that Justine is going to have with Ruth and that Brian is going to bring. And then the piece that gives us a bit of hope, because what's the ultimate vision? Isn't the aim this notion of, the next slide, this notion of personhood? Don't we all want, all of us in this country, to feel like we have dignity, opportunity, and we belong? Not just some, and not some more than others. And so that's the other piece that I do in this book, is I talk about how we help each one of us, whether we are black or white or colored or Indian, how we remember the past in order for us to enjoy this dignity that God has created us to have. How do we bring about recognition of ourselves? How do we do the redistribution we speak about through opportunities and jobs and land? But how do we make sure that we all belong in the end, not just some of us, to the detriment of others? So, the question that I am going to ask you again, but not right this minute, is how does this conversation we're having make you feel right now? And some of those statistics I know makes you feel ashamed, embarrassed, or angry, depending on where you sit in the story.